I'm not sure if you can see that from here, but up there in the hills of North Yorkshire stands an enormous cross. And the story behind its origins was almost forgotten. In fact, even to this day, many people pass by on the nearby roads, see it from a distance and have no idea where it came from. But today we're going to try and rediscover its story. We've got everything from French emperors to film directors and some of the deadliest battles in European history. And from what I've been told, it's pretty massive in person, so it should be worth the journey. So come along with me and let's rediscover the story of the Rylstone Cross. So we're back in North Yorkshire again, unsurprisingly based on the name, the Rylstone Cross, just up the road from a small village called Rylstone. And the cross itself, not only has it been here for a pretty long time, but it's been through 3 different iterations, 3 different versions. And the first one takes us all the way back to 1815. And that's a date that's probably going to seem familiar to many of you almost instantly, but for some of you maybe not, and that's okay. And the reason it's significant is because 1815 marked the year of the Battle of Waterloo. Now this takes us back to a time in history that's kind of complicated. We're going back to the era of Napoleon, definitely a well-known name, but a character that many, myself included, don't know all that much about. And he's kind of a difficult person to understand. Do you think these are friendly cows? They look hungry. And if you've ever studied Napoleon or read up a little bit, you'll find that people tend to disagree a lot about his character. Even the experts, the academics who have written books and even series of books around Napoleon hold different opinions and disagree on certain parts. But for the purposes of this story, all we really need to know is that for a period of 15 years, he was waging war, the Napoleonic Wars, a significant era of turbulence for Europe, let's say. And towards the end of this time period, as we approach 1815, this is where there was a very real, credible threat of an invasion in England. And so leading up to this time, before the Battle of Waterloo, around the country, and here locally in Yorkshire and nearby Lancashire, voluntary groups of people started getting together to run drills and prepare to defend their country. Sheep are looking a little bit nervous. Oops. Now one of these volunteer groups who were getting ready, preparing for invasion, were based here in nearby Rylstone, and they were led by a man named Captain Blake. So Captain Blake helped to get this group of volunteers together. He was leading them. They were running frequent drills in preparation, but ultimately their efforts weren't needed, thankfully, because Napoleon's efforts were stopped as a result of the Battle of Waterloo, and so the threat, the risk of invasion dissipated. And since these volunteer groups were no longer needed, they disbanded. And so one last time, following the Battle of Waterloo, Captain Blake got his group of volunteers together. They marched up the hills here, just like this sheep has done, towards the very top of the hills, where you can maybe see the cross coming into view a little bit. And they set up a monument to commemorate the Battle of Waterloo, the conclusion of the Napoleonic Wars. Now exactly what they installed up there, this is one part of the story that's still a little bit hazy. What sounds most likely is that they carved some kind of stone pillar, but there are other records that state that there was a big boulder there that they carved into the shape of a man. So some people used to refer to this as the Rylstone Man. So we don't know exactly what it looked like, but I'm going to refer to it as a pillar for the purpose of these stories, and you'll find out why very soon. And so it was, the first version of the monument was in place. And it stood there for quite some time, for a number of decades, until 1887. Another date that might sound familiar, but again, maybe not. It's a date that crops up a lot if you're kind of looking into history around this country, or even if you're just exploring the countryside and you find the various towers, follies, monuments, you're probably going to come across it at some point. And the reason is because 1887 marked Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee, her 50th anniversary as reigning queen. And in fact, it's a date that's come up on this channel before, because we've found other structures around here not too far away that were built to commemorate this very event. So this is where the monument entered its second phase of life. because to commemorate Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee, there were 2 wooden arms appended to this column, turning it into a cross. So it took one step closer to its most recent version that we're about to see very soon. I think the sheep have just seen the farmer approaching. Maybe that means feeding time normally. So with regards to this second version of the cross, 2 things kind of stood out to me. Number one, the fact that they used wooden additions for the arms of this cross. Wood not being a material that's typically the best to be placed just in the middle of nowhere. I mean, at least if you wanted to survive for a very long time out in the weather. So maybe it was a matter of cost or just available materials at the time. But secondly, the fact that they repurposed a pre-existing monument sounded kind of strange to me. Maybe this is a common thing, but it kind of felt a bit like they were overwriting something that was previously there. Maybe not a big deal, but it struck me as being a little bit unusual. But it happened either way, and there the cross stood with its wooden wings for a number of decades beyond this time. This is a kind of eerie patch of wood, just kind of on its own. How does that happen? I guess there probably used to be more woodland here. Okay, we're getting a bit closer. Cameras are never good at picking up things from a distance, unless you've got some kind of super lens, which I haven't. But you can probably at least see kind of a stick sticking out of that outcrop of rocks at the top. It doesn't look that big from here, but I think it's around 8-9 foot maybe. I tried finding measurements online, but I didn't find any. And that's why I brought this as well. Yes, I am the kind of person to take a tape measure all the way up to the top of a hill and measure a giant cross. Somebody's got to do it, right? I could see my breath about 10 minutes ago down there, and I'm way too hot. That's the tricky thing with hiking up hills. Even when the weather's really cold, you're going to get a couple of kilometers up and be absolutely roasting. All right, we're getting closer and I'm getting more out of breath. Nearly there though. Okay, so after the Golden Jubilee, the cross with the wooden wings stood there for quite a long time. Many years, many decades. But over the years, the materials didn't survive too well. It became heavily weathered and it was in a bit of a state of disrepair. And so in 1995, plans to install a brand new cross began. The new cross, I hope this wind isn't too bad for the microphone. The new cross was going to be made entirely of stone. It was funded by a local man named Jim Cagill. Okay, sorry, the jacket's back on. It's very windy. This is rapidly turning into a survival episode. So, the new cross was funded by a man named Jim Cagill. And unfortunately, if the records I found were the same person, I think Jim passed away in 2019. But the brand new cross that he funded is still here. Not only is it entirely stone now, but it's bigger. It's got a plaque and a steel time capsule with newspaper clippings in from around the time it was installed. This is getting a little bit, a bit more wild than it was at the beginning, but that's what we like. I'm going to lose my hat. I'm calling it right now. Okay, and back to the story, sorry. It just so happens that 2025 marks 30 years since this latest cross was installed and erected. And there are a couple of records that suggest it was installed to commemorate a different purpose. Now, I'm not sure if this part's true or not, because I couldn't find any local sources that confirmed it. But on the day it was installed in 1995, it was VE Day, Victory Day. So some people say that this cross stands to commemorate all the lives lost throughout World War I and World War II. So not the Battle of Waterloo, not Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee, but Victory Day. So if that was the case, you know, its purpose has changed for a third time. But as I said, I'm not certain about that one. It was installed on that day, pretty sure about that. I guess we can check the plaque and find out what it says. Doesn't look that big from here. Okay, it's pretty big. It's pretty big. Before we measure anything, let's see what the plaque says without falling off this cliff. Okay, again, probably very difficult to read on camera, but it says Rylstone Cross replaced 1995 with help and donations from National Power, Yorkshire Dales National Park, Bolton Abbey, Rylstone freeholders. This doesn't totally match up with the story I read, which was from a local source about Jim Cagle. I'm not going to suggest he didn't pay for it, but maybe we can find out. Okay, so it doesn't say anything about marking VE Day. Oh, speaking of Jim Cagle, we got it there, 1995. I assume those are his initials. Can I measure that without seriously injuring myself? I mean, let's find out. Nobody seems to know how tall this is, so let's play a little game and try and find out. Time to place your bets. To give you a reference, I'm about 6'1", so I reckon 9.5. Let's have a go. It's going to be too windy, isn't it? Maybe if we get the bottom bit first. So that's 7'6". Then we just need the top section. Where is the least wind? Let's have a go. No! Come on, this is possible. It's not possible, is it? How are we going to do this? Wait, what was the first measurement? I'm going to have to do this in the edit because I forgot. This is a stupid idea. No! God. I think that was about it. Can we get a freeze frame? Okay, if that was it, that was 3'8". Okay, we'll check that freeze frame and add it up in the edit. Let me know if you got it right. This is what I was trying to not fall off, by the way. So, it's pretty windy. Nice views though. Okay, so there we have it. The 3 stories of the Rylstone Cross. Sitting now, I think, probably for a good time longer in its current phase. But who knows? Maybe if we were to come back somehow in several hundreds of years, maybe there'd be something else there. Maybe a spaceship. Now that was my entire plan for this video. Visit the cross, rediscover its history, and then head home. But as I discovered on the way up, the route back to where I've arrived here and parked is not super safe. And actually the safest way to head back is via this. Again, probably too far away to see, but we're about to embark on a little bonus chapter for anybody who wants a bit more adventure. And the height of this one, I do know, if the records are correct of course, is 23 feet tall. The rest of the history, we'll have to find out when we get there because I didn't research that part. I only did this bit. If you've already had enough, well, that makes me feel a bit sad, but I understand. Thank you for watching either way. I hope you enjoyed the story of the cross. If you're sticking with me, then let's do this. Let's go and find out what's over there. Some bonus trivia about Rylstone, the village down the hills from here. It was the source of inspiration for the British film Calendar Girls. If you're not from the UK, you probably have no idea what that is. I don't know if it was big internationally. Actually, it might have been. I have no idea. But it's a nice story, it's very funny, worth checking out. Sometimes hard to tell here what's a path and what's not a path. It also still fascinates me just how much the scenery changes within the space of 10 feet. That measuring was a bit of a disaster. I underestimated the height of it, to be honest. I thought from the photos maybe a couple of feet taller than me, but it's bigger than that. Oh. That was a good disguise. I think that's a grouse. I don't think I've actually seen one before. I've seen plenty of pheasants around Yorkshire, but that's brown. You can always hear them if you're walking through the moorland in certain parts around here, but you can't always see them because they blend in so well. You know, if I was a geologist, I'd probably have something to say about all these rocks, but I got nothing. They look nice though. That one kind of looks like a big face. It's like an eye, nose, looks a bit like my nose. It's big enough. And then we got a sort of mouth. Okay, we've lost the monument. It's 23 feet tall and we can't see it anymore. Must be getting closer though. It's kind of deceptive in the hills, or just with any hiking. I always underestimate distances. I don't know about you. Things never look that far, and then it turns out it's about 3 miles. Okay, we can finally see it in the distance. Now, in case you ever find yourself up here and you're a bit lost, there is some incredibly useful signage, luckily. Ah. Don't know what that means. Must have been a gate before, but does that mean there used to be a fence all the way here or something? C. I'm sure somebody can tell me what that means. Maybe a reference to the local towns? I don't know. How does this happen? It's kind of weird. And it's got big holes in certain places. Let's do a little investigation. It reminds me a little bit of the Hitching Stone, which we visited not so long ago. It's very different in a lot of ways, but I mean kind of these ridges. And in the Hitching Stone, again, probably different, but it had one hole similar size to that going all the way through. Oh, that's different. In the Hitching Stone, it was caused by a tree. Now, you're not going to believe this, but I forgot to bring snacks again. Rookie mistake. We're nearly there now though. Can you see it from here? We're about 2 minutes away. Probably about 10 seconds in editing time. That does look pretty big. Yeah, that's a bit taller than 10 foot. I think the 23 feet, probably accurate. Not going to get my tape measure up this one. We've got some wreaths here, so thankfully this is actually really easy to read, for me at least. Let me get the camera up. So it says, Roll of Honour of the men of this parish who gave their lives in 2 world wars, 1914 to 1919. We've got John Dent, Frank Hyam, Charles Hymas, Horace Marshall, Gerald Maud, Michael Maud, Fred Nelson, Jane Orman Proctor, Thomas B. Renton, Rose Spence, James H. Swales, Tom Swales, and John W. Whitfield. We also got Sidney Daggett, Richard M. Proctor, and Curtis Walker. Now there is also, you probably already noticed, some engravings here. Now I don't know if they're in connection with this. You would hope so, given the purpose of this memorial, that these aren't just, you know, names for the sake of it. But I would guess probably not, given some of the dates. Maybe other people who weren't included on the plaque for one reason or another. 1914 and 1919. I wouldn't assume there's anything on the other side. There isn't. Just lots of wind. Some good views though. If you're still here and you stuck with me through chapter 2, thank you. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. This is going to be the final chapter. There's no chapter 3, me walking back to the car. I'm going to assume that nobody wants to watch that, but let me know if I'm wrong. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's journey. I would definitely recommend coming to visit here if you get a chance. It's a really nice walk. Plenty of things to see on the way. I don't think Rylstone is too big, so I'm not sure if it's the kind of place that you can return to and head in for a cafe or a pub lunch, but I might be totally wrong. It is a village after all, so there's probably something there. And there are other kind of pubs, places to get food nearby on the roads in and out from here. So definitely plenty of things to do before or afterwards. Either way, hope you've enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel, making these videos possible. Fingers crossed, I'll see you next time.